Dr. Nasha Winters,
Yes.
you were just telling me that your husband suffered from some low T and you
Yep.
didn't want him to do the hormone replacement therapy, but you'd found some of my stuff on cold plunge and testosterone. Will
Yep.
you tell
Sure.
me what your husband did?
Well, and here's a guy who is like super committed to his metabolic lifestyle, works out, like really well, except or not over, he's really, really fit. But he was just realizing when we had some of our lab testing done that he was like dipping in that department of testosterone. And he was like, oh, I'm not going to be one of those guys. But he also didn't want to take the tea. So I had been plunging in the mornings for months and months and years, and he just never really got into it. Like he would love to go to hot springs and do that, but he was just not into getting in the plunge. And was telling him about running across one of your podcasts and one of your blogs about cold plunging and tea. And next thing you know, it's like, I don't know, maybe this is a guy thing. You just don't have to tell much. If it has to do with your penis, they will do something about it. But next thing you know, he's plunging at bedtime every night. First of all, it was heaven for me as a postmenopausal woman. It was like so nice to like go up against something cool in the evening. But within, I think, 6 weeks from his labs to the next lab, we ran another free and total testosterone, and he brought it up over 500 points in
Whoa.
just that period of time.
In
No
6 weeks.
changes. 6 weeks. No changes. And he probably, I would say 5 out of 7 days plunged. It wasn't even every day for that 6 weeks, but it was pretty darn routine. Yeah.
One of the things that is missing from all of the literature and the popular social media education on testosterone, and it doesn't matter, you can get
Yeah.
Jay Campbell's book, you can get Abraham Morgenthaler's book, and you get lots of good information. But one of the things that isn't part of the conversation is the role of mitochondria. Testosterone is synthesized inside the mitochondria, and the rate limiting step is the transport of cholesterol to the inner membrane of the mitochondria. So it's got to get through the cell, then it's got to get through the outer membrane, then it's got to get to the inner membrane. It's got to meet this enzyme, this P450 SCC, which, by the way, is
Mhm.
named for the wavelength of light that it will absorb. So you have an enzyme inside your mitochondria that can be activated by 450 nanometer light,
Wow.
where's that coming from? It's not the sun. It is sensitive to light produced inside the body. So when you get into the cold, you stimulate mitobiogenesis, and this is a wonderful thing. Now you have more numerous mitochondria. But for a man, it's in the testes that is produced. So where you really need the mitochondria to show up is not necessarily in the brown fat, but in the testes. What
Interesting.
people aren't talking about enough when it comes to testosterone is how do they boost their mitochondrial function. And
Wow.
one of the best ways is for a man to strip himself down to his birthday suit and get right into that ice bath. It doesn't take very long.
Yeah.
Exercise is good for the mitochondria, but will not build the mitochondria to the same extent that
Amazing.
a cold plunge will. It will not stimulate the same level of light production inside the mitochondria that a cold plunge will. So you want to do nutritional support, and of course you want to stay in shape and get your exercise. But the best way to stimulate mitobiogenesis
Wow.
is the ice bath. So that's
So
often
cool.
for guys who have everything else dialed in. They're getting
Yeah.
good sleep, they have enough magnesium, they have enough zinc, their
Yeah.
diet is on point, and they are fit. What is missing from them is often they're just not getting cold enough. And it
And
doesn't
that's
take a lot. A
huge.
little bit will go a long way.
You're just making me think here that the difference for him was from March of 2024 and even ongoing. He left because we were living in Mexico from October 2021 until then. And then he's opened up this lab in the Wexford building in downtown Phoenix. So he was spending his 12 hours a day in this lab instead of the first hours of every day out on a paddleboard in the red light, like as the sun is coming up. So right there, that makes sense why things also dipped, because he wasn't getting kind of a charge from the light aspect. And then the kind of just the incredible stress plus the chemicals plus God only knows how much Wi-Fi he was being exposed to.
Yep.
It just chipped away because he was doing everything else right. Yeah.
People in Phoenix are unfortunately often vitamin D deficient. They're
Yeah.
often light deficient. And it's
Right.
because it's so damn hot out
Right.
that they stay in their air conditioned buildings. They don't want to
Totally.
walk,
Yeah.
And so your husband might have been in Phoenix stationed, in this lab with the fluorescent light and just
Yeah.
been ironically in this terrible light
Right.
environment because he's not going to go outside when it's 115.
No, no,
Hmm.
exactly. And that was a shift. Now that you start talking about, I'm like, wait a minute, this was the other thing that changed for him because it was like his diet didn't change, his workout, he left from paddleboarding every morning on this Bay of Banderas in Mexico to biking every day in the mountains of, Arizona. So still very fit, but it's just different. And he was doing those in like early morning or late evening. So not getting that direct sunlight to get that vitamin D charge. It's making all these things make sense, which is
Yep.
what we were talking about of the environment, like, is so critical to match the environment inside your body with the environment outside your
Yep.
body. And if you're in a different environment than you're accustomed to, you may need to find ways to adapt better. And that this just gives me that input that we needed from, I think, April to June, or April just shut, because it was April 7th we moved back we were back in Arizona and we had our first labs done, and then about 6 weeks later we repeated them. So it was early June, and that was the only difference,
Well,
was the
some of
plunging.
it might have been seasonal upswing between April and June.
Okay.
Usually, total testosterone levels are increasing, but 500 points,
That's a lot,
500
right.
nanograms per deciliter.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Significant. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
I love that we got to talk about that. Thanks.
Yeah.